There's no house that's truly yours. It's your sister's now, they said at family dinner. Disappointing, isn't it? Well, today I'm going to tell you exactly how I turned that betrayal into a quiet, calculated revenge. So sit down. This is a story you'll want to hear. I was 10 minutes late to family dinner on purpose. It was the only decision I made that evening. The front door creaked open before I even knocked. My father stood there, arms crossed, looking at his watch like I'd missed a deposition. "Portland traffic again?" he asked, not unkindly, but not kindly either. I didn't answer. Just smiled, kissed him on the cheek out of habit, and stepped inside. The scent of my mother's roast beef filled the entryway. It was always the same. Over-seasoned and underloved, much like most of our family traditions. I hung up my coat, smoothed my hair, and took a deep breath before entering the lion's den. Sabrina was already lounging on the cream-colored sofa, boots kicked up on the glass coffee table. She waved lazily, her wine glass poised like she was posing for a lifestyle blog. "Hey, Claire," she said. "Love the haircut." "It's the same as last month," I replied quietly, sitting in the only armchair not taken. Mom flitted in from the kitchen, cheeks pink and smile wide. "Dinner's almost ready, girls. Let's catch up while it finishes." Translation: let's pretend to be normal for 15 minutes. Brian arrived 20 minutes later, looking sheepish but receiving no lecture from Dad. "We were about to start without you," Mom said with a wink. I watched it all from my seat. My place in this family was always visible but never central. Background support. Dinner began like clockwork. My father dominated conversation, pontificating about real estate markets and today's entitled workforce. My mother offered performative concern, asking about our weeks with questions that were merely springboards for neighborhood gossip. When it was my turn to share, I gave the sanitized version: the promotion at work, the new project in Tacoma. I was halfway through describing an environmental impact assessment when my father cleared his throat. The family signaled that the real conversation was about to begin. "Sabrina has some news," he said with ceremonial gravity. Sabrina looked up from her phone, slipping into practiced vulnerability. "Jason and I broke up," she announced. "He's being ridiculous about the lease. He wants me to keep paying even though I'm moving out." Mom reached across the table and took her hand, eyes full of motherly pity. "It's just not right, sweetheart. You shouldn't have to deal with that on top of everything else." I nodded automatically, the way I'd learned to. Supportive. Invisible. Internally, I was counting the minutes until dessert. Then my father continued, slicing his roast beef with surgeon-like precision. "We've worked it all out. Sabrina will move into your place while she gets back on her feet." The room stilled. My fork hovered in the air. I blinked slowly. Mom smiled brightly. "It makes perfect sense. You're always working late anyway, and you've got that spare room you barely use. Sabrina just needs a few months." My chest tightened in that old, familiar way. The feeling of being boxed in, overridden, dismissed. I forced my voice calm. "I actually use that room as an office, for freelance work." Sabrina rolled her eyes, laughing. "You can work at the kitchen table. I did all through college." I stared at her. Her college, which she completed in 5.5 years with 2 leaves of absence and tuition fully covered by our parents. I'd finished mine in 3 on scholarships while working nights. "It's just temporary," my father added, finality coding every syllable. "Family helps family." Mom was already tapping her calendar app. "We can help move her things next Saturday. Your building has visitor parking, right?" No one looked at me. No one asked if I had plans, or if I wanted to give up the only space in my life that was truly mine. Brian glanced at me, then away, already retreating from a war he didn't want to be conscripted into. I cleared my throat. "I'll need to check my lease about long-term guests." Mom waved her hand like I'd mentioned needing milk. "Of course, honey, that's just a formality. They can't stop you from helping your sister." I didn't reply. Just lowered my eyes, nodded faintly, and let the silence carry me through the rest of the meal. They laughed. They planned. They complimented Sabrina's strength. I helped Mom clear the plates. I didn't ask her if she remembered the time I'd begged not to host Thanksgiving 3 years ago and had been told to stop being difficult. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to. My jaw ached from clenching. My phone buzzed when I pulled into my apartment garage. A message from Sabrina. "Thanks for being chill about it. I really need this." My apartment wasn't just mine. It was every overnight shift, every declined trip, every silent no. I swallowed. I stood in the entryway, keys still in hand, the door clicking shut behind me with a sound that used to mean peace. Now it just echoed back with tension. I looked around at the space I'd built. The secondhand bookshelves I sanded and painted myself. The overwatered fig tree near the window. The deep green couch I'd saved for 6 months to buy. Everything in here had a story, a cost, a choice. And now, according to my family, it wasn't really mine. I dropped my bag on the bench, kicked off my shoes, and headed straight to the kitchen. The fridge hummed. My jaw did too. The roast beef from earlier still sat heavy in my stomach. I pulled out a seltzer and leaned against the counter, letting the cold compress into the inside of my wrist to cool the heat building under my skin. The words my mother had used swirled in my head. "We can help move her things next Saturday." Not, "Would you be okay with this?" Not even a, "Let's talk about it." Just plans made, decisions declared. Like the time I came home from college and found a stranger's luggage in my bedroom. Mom had given a distant cousin my room for a week without asking. When I'd confronted her, she'd smiled and said, "We're family. We don't need to ask permission." I opened my laptop. Lease agreement. No subletting. Temporary guests may not exceed 14 consecutive days without prior written approval. A beat of relief pulsed through my chest. I wasn't being difficult. I was being lawful. And finally, I had something to point to beyond emotion. I called Jasmine. She picked up before the second ring. "Hey, how was the dinner?" They did it again. There was a pause. "What now?" I told her. The roast beef, the announcement, the casual way my apartment became community property. When I finished, there was silence. Then, "They don't get to assign your life like homework, Claire. You're not a group project." I laughed. It was brittle, but it helped. "You're not gonna let this happen, right?" I don't want to blow up. No one's asking for a showdown. Just don't roll over. Not this time. We talked another 20 minutes. She reminded me of moments I'd forgotten, times I'd been erased, pushed aside, smoothed over. I hung up with my spine a little straighter. I opened a fresh doc and typed, "Plan." That's when the email from Ryan pinged in. Subject: urgent project delay. Request to work remote this week? He was supposed to be on site for the Burke development deal, but a pipe burst in his building last night. "Do you know any short-term rentals near downtown?" he wrote. I stared at the screen, blinked. Then, before I could overthink it, I called him. He picked up with a groggy, "Hey, Monroe," like we were already mid-conversation. "You still need a place?" "For 2 weeks, maybe more. My condo's a swamp." "I might have something," I said. By the time we ended the call, I had a name for the subletter, a timeline, and someone who would not let my family through the door because they meant well. I emailed Tanya, the building manager, under the subject line, "Occupancy policy clarification." Framed everything as curiosity. "I may have a professional acquaintance staying temporarily. What documents would you need?" She replied within the hour. Background check. Lease addendum. No unregistered guests longer than 14 days. Security is instructed not to allow access otherwise. I smiled. I drafted a formal sublease with Ryan. We agreed to a timeline. 2 weeks with option to extend. He offered to pay utilities. I told him that wasn't the point. "It's about boundaries," I said. He didn't ask. He just nodded. By the time I logged off my laptop, it was nearly 1 a.m. I looked around again. At my office nook, the print above the sofa, the blanket folded just so, and realized something new had settled into the apartment. Resolve. The next day passed in a blur. I booked a weekend out of town, just far enough to be unreachable, just long enough to coincide with the day Sabrina would try to move in. I started compiling a Claire kit for Ryan. Extra keys, a building map, all the lease documentation in case of anything. That evening, as I sat on my couch eating leftover pad thai and mapping out security camera options, my phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. "Do you want me to bring curtains, or is your place already cute enough for me?" They had plans. I had paperwork. The sun had barely crested over the Seattle skyline when I slipped the envelope under Tanya's door. Final copy of the signed addendum, background check confirmation, and emergency contact forms, all perfectly labeled. I didn't need her signature this time. Her Friday reply had been clear. "Everything's in order. You're good to go." Ryan arrived exactly at 9 a.m., a duffel bag in one hand and a grocery tote in the other. He wore a navy hoodie and clean jeans, nothing flashy, just intentional. Someone who looked like he belonged. We walked the apartment one last time together, and I handed over the keys. "There's oat milk in the fridge and a list of takeout I like in the drawer," I said, trying to keep the tone light. He smiled. "Anything you want me to say if your family shows up?" "Just be honest. You're the legal occupant. The paperwork says so." He gave a quick two-fingered salute. "Roger that." I stepped into the hallway with a small roller suitcase and a leather laptop bag. The building's weekend concierge nodded as I passed. Outside, a rideshare waited to take me north toward the coast. I didn't look back. By 10:45 a.m., I was checked into a quiet inn in Port Townsend, sipping coffee from a stoneware mug on a balcony overlooking the gray stretch of water. The silence wasn't just beautiful. It was medicinal. I pulled out my phone. Group text from Sabrina, time-stamped 9:17 a.m. "Moving day. So excited to turn Claire's guest room into a mini studio. Thanks Mom plus Dad for everything." Attached was a photo of cardboard boxes, a cozy AF throw pillow on top. I didn't reply. At 10:58, Tanya forwarded a confirmation that building security had received the guest authorization and would enforce access restrictions. I thanked her, sent Ryan a courtesy check-in message, then turned off all notifications except for Ryan, Jasmine, and work, and waited. At 11:03 a.m., my security app buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the feed. The hallway camera blinked to life, grainy but clear. My father stood at my door in a crisp flannel and khakis, knocking 3 times. Denise, in a cream puffer and pearls, hovered beside him with a plastic file organizer in her arms. Behind them, Sabrina juggled her phone and a coffee cup, her long cardigan flapping like a cape. No one answered. Charles knocked again. Harder this time. Denise rang the doorbell 3 times in succession, leaning forward as if the force of her insistence could breach the lock. Sabrina stepped back, tapping furiously into her phone. Probably texting me. They waited. Then Charles pulled out his phone and after a minute began pacing. Denise gestured at the camera lens in my doorbell like it could be shamed into opening. At 11:12 a.m., the building security guard arrived. I recognized him. David, polite but no nonsense. He wore the same navy windbreaker with staff stitched in white. They talked. I couldn't hear them, but body language told enough. Charles gestured broadly. Denise interrupted. David shook his head. My phone buzzed again. Ryan. They're here. Security held firm. I just opened the door. I watched it happen. The door opened slowly behind David and Ryan appeared. Sleepy-eyed, barefoot, holding a mug that said, "Just breathe." He nodded politely at the group. No smile. No explanation. Denise's jaw dropped. Sabrina's face collapsed in real time from disbelief to something that looked dangerously close to betrayal. Charles leaned in, pointing toward the apartment. David stepped in between, holding up a hand. Ryan spoke, short, firm sentences, and then closed the door. They stayed another minute. Then they left. I sat back in the hotel chair and exhaled, realizing my hand had been clenched into a fist. The warm ceramic of the mug was still in my palm. Outside, gulls swept the shoreline. My phone lit up again. Incoming call. Dad. My phone was blown up with voicemails. I let it burn. The silence was mine. The sun pushed through the gauzy curtains of my hotel suite, casting streaks of soft gold across the comforter. I rolled over, stretched, and reached for the nightstand. Not for my phone, but for the mug of now-cold chamomile tea I hadn't finished last night. It tasted like quiet. I knew what I'd see when I unlocked my screen. I just wasn't ready to hand the morning over to them yet. When I finally tapped open my phone, I didn't count the missed calls. I didn't need to. The weight of them vibrated through the screen. Charles, Denise, Sabrina, all lighting up in a cascade of concern, fury, disbelief. Voicemail after voicemail, each more urgent than the last. I hit play on the first one from Dad. "This is ridiculous, Claire. You've made your point. Call us back before we escalate this legally." I blinked. Legally? Next was Mom. Her voice trembled with manufactured heartbreak. "We raised you better than this. Sabrina, is devastated. Is that really what you want? To make your own sister feel abandoned? We're your family. Families don't ambush each other." I nearly laughed at the irony. Then Sabrina. Just a single line of text first. "Why are you doing this to me?" As if I'd rearranged her life out of spite, not self-preservation. I walked out to the balcony, phone in hand, and let the breeze wash over me. The sky was pale and clean, the kind of quiet canvas that seemed to whisper, "You don't owe them your peace." I texted Ryan a check-in. He replied instantly. "Building securities increase patrols. David's still on shift. Your apartment's untouched." A pause. Then, "They came back last night. Just for a few minutes. Didn't try anything." Sabrina looked off. Not angry. Just lost. I stared at his words for a long moment, then muted the family group chat and turned off email notifications from any sender with my last name. That's when Jasmine called. "Don't even think about opening your inbox," she said by way of greeting. "Too late." "Claire, listen to me. This is not betrayal. This is boundaries. Big difference. They're making it feel like the same thing. Of course they are. Because guilt is control that's been spray painted to look like love. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your space." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "They're spinning it like I left Sabrina on the street. You left her in the care of two fully functioning parents who once bought her a used Volvo because she cried during a thunderstorm. She'll survive." I smiled into my tea. The notifications kept coming. Charles's voice on another voicemail was clipped, deliberate. "Your behavior is immature. When this is all over, we'll be having a serious conversation about consequences." Denise's email forwarded to my work address was longer. A dramatic subject line. "You've broken something sacred." Inside, paragraphs on family unity, sacrifice, the holidays, how disappointed Grandma would be if she were alive to see this. I blocked the domain. By mid-afternoon, I felt emptied out. Not from grief, but from releasing an old script. The version of me that would have caved after the second voicemail. That Claire was done. That's when the voice memo came in. From Sabrina. I braced myself for sarcasm, accusation, something about selfish older sisters. But her voice was unsure. Searching. "Hey, I don't know what's happening. I thought you were okay with it. They told me it was all set. I wouldn't have done this if I knew. Really knew. You weren't on board. I don't get it, Claire. I know you've always been the strong one, but you kind of disappeared this time, and honestly, I'm confused." There was a pause, the kind that feels heavier than words. "Can we just talk? Not as sisters in the drama, but as Claire and Sabrina?" For the first time in our lives, she showed up without backup. The café was small and mercifully quiet. midweek afternoon lull, two baristas talking in low tones behind the counter, and a gentle hum of music that didn't try to impress anyone. I chose a table by the window. Neutral ground. Not my turf, not hers. No ghosts here. Sabrina was already outside when I arrived. She spotted me through the glass and hesitated just a second before walking in, arms folded tight across her coat like she was bracing for impact. No dramatic entrance, no mom trailing behind to explain her feelings, no dad ready to deflect. Just her. She ordered a lavender latte and took the seat across from me like it might collapse beneath her. I sipped black coffee, silent. Let her find the words. I didn't expect it to go this way, she said finally, staring into the foam like it might offer a script. Me neither, I said. Her laugh was short, bitter. That's the thing though, right? I thought I knew how this would go. I'd cry a little, Mom would spin it, Dad would declare it settled, and you'd make room. Like always. I didn't answer. I thought you were okay with it. Mom said you always help. My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice even. And did you ever ask me? She looked up. Her eyes were puffy. No makeup. Number I didn't. We sat in the quiet for a while, punctuated only by the hiss of the espresso machine. Her fingers traced the edge of the napkin, folding and unfolding it. I got fired, she said suddenly. 3 weeks ago. That made me pause. She didn't look at me, just kept talking, low and flat. It was a contract gig. Gallery said my work was too derivative and they couldn't justify the grant extension. I told Mom. She told me not to stress you. Said you had a big project at work. That it'd just make you feel guilty. I stared at her. So they knew. And they still ambushed me. She nodded. Dad said it was just easier if we already had a plan before we talked to you. I guess they forgot you're not furniture. That hit harder than she meant it to. I don't want to be rescued anymore, she said. I mean, yeah, I always land somewhere soft. And I've hated it, being treated like a lost cause with nice shoes. I just never knew how to stop falling. Her voice cracked. I didn't move, didn't reach for her. Not yet. Do you know how many times they've told me I'm the sensitive one? That you were built tougher? She looked up. You weren't. You just got better at hiding the bruises. I exhaled slowly. They told me I had to be the bigger person because I was older. That I shouldn't react. That I should understand. So I stopped reacting. And they mistook that for agreement. Sabrina swallowed. I think I've been hiding behind that. Behind the version of you they created. The one who always bails us out. I finally leaned forward. Not close enough to comfort. Just enough to be heard. Then stop letting them script you as a victim. Because they already cast me as the villain. That landed. She blinked hard, then nodded. The air between us shifted, less like tension, more like quiet recognition. Something unspoken softened. She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded flyer. I raised an eyebrow. It's just a list, she said. 1-bedroom rentals. I'm starting over. She looked up, eyes steady. I don't want your apartment. I want my own story. They expected tears. I brought terms. The café was small, tucked along a quiet block in Queen Anne where the hills met the fog. It was the kind of place with low lighting and wide tables, intentionally neutral. Chosen precisely so no one could claim home court advantage. I arrived early, took the corner seat facing the door, and set my phone on the table, screen down. My back to the wall, my eyes on the entrance. I was done being blindsided. At 4:12 p.m., the door swung open. Charles walked in first, coat still buttoned like armor. Denise followed, clutching her handbag like a life preserver. Behind them, Sabrina. Her posture was smaller than usual, but her eyes met mine with quiet calm. She nodded once. I nodded back. No hugs, no how are yous, just chairs scraping the floor as they sat. Silence pulsed for a beat. Then Charles leaned in slightly, elbows on the table like we were in a negotiation. We just want to understand why you're acting this way. I blinked once, then twice. You're not confused, I said, voice steady. You're just not in control. Denise winced, but Charles didn't flinch. He was used to managing rooms. I wasn't a room anymore. I think, my mother said, measured and soft, that this has gone too far. We are a family. We help each other. What message does it send when one of us walks away in the moment someone needs help? It sends the message, I replied, that boundaries matter more than appearances, and that access to me isn't unconditional anymore. Her mouth opened, but I kept going. For decades, you've made decisions about me, where I'll be, what I'll host, what I'll give, without asking. You didn't forget to consult me. You decided not to. That's not love. That's control dressed up as tradition. Charles frowned. You're being dramatic. We thought. You thought, I cut in, that I would stay quiet. Again. And you banked on it. He exhaled through his nose, rigid, unmoving. I'm not here for apologies, I said. I'm here to make the new rules clear. Sabrina stirred beside him, then gently broke her silence. She didn't act out. She acted right. That shifted something. Denise turned to her daughter, startled. Charles's jaw tightened, but his hands dropped from the table. I pulled out a small folded sheet from my coat pocket and laid it flat. No more decisions about me without me. No keys handed out behind my back. No discussions about my space, my money, or my time unless I'm part of the conversation. If you cross that line again, I won't argue. I'll disappear. For good. Denise's voice trembled. You used to cry when we left you out. I still do, I said gently. But now I cry in places where I'm safe, not where I have to earn the right to be heard. No one moved. Ryan's text buzzed in my pocket. All good at the apartment. Quiet weekend? Hope the conversation goes as planned. I slipped the phone back, unread. There was no dramatic outburst. Just quiet. Stiff. Necessary. I stood, picked up the folded list, and slipped it into my bag. No one reached to stop me. As I turned to leave, Charles remained silent. Denise, eyes wet, whispered, You've changed. I paused, then turned slightly, just enough to look at her over my shoulder. I finally started treating myself like someone who matters. They came expecting obedience dressed as family tradition, but left facing the one thing they never prepared for. A daughter with a spine and the documents to match. Claire didn't scream, didn't beg. She simply enforced what should have been respected all along. Her autonomy. Because when injustice hides behind the mask of love, it takes quiet courage to unmask it, and even more strength to walk away without looking back. Like the final echo in a long courtroom silence, justice may not roar, but it lands with weight. Perhaps standing up today means you'll never again have to bow to injustice tomorrow. If this story struck a chord with you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. Type 1 if you've ever had to reclaim your space from those who claim to love you.